Open the pod bay doors, please, pal.
All right.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Look at the coast. We get together, have a few laughs.
A Movie Odyssey with Brad Patello and Gus Trout.
It's a good one.
It's so fucking good. It's unbelievable. I can't even. I don't know where to begin. Like I have 5 pages of notes.
Wow. Well, I got some ideas. For like here. Let me bring up my things I had bookmarked here. The IMDb page open, of course.
Yeah, I got it open right here.
Hey gang, it's Brad Patello here with my good friend Gus Trouth. We are 2 animators who like movies, and today we are discussing one of my all-time favorite movies, Die Hard, from 1988. I think we'll just kind of, we almost have to address this. It's we're recording this on the 22nd. So it's a couple days before Christmas. Gus, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
It's scientifically proven to be a Christmas movie. I watched a YouTube video, so it's fact.
Well, if it's on YouTube, it must be true, right?
It was actually a very interesting YouTube video. They break down a couple different categories, like the amount of Christmas trees, Christmas ornaments you see throughout the movie, and tally those up. The amount of Christmas songs in the movie, the amount of it was another factor was like how many times they say the word Christmas or Merry Christmas or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And Die Hard like destroys so many movies like Miracle on 34th Street and big movies, you know. It's
just on those categories. Yeah.
The science is in people.
Well, you can't argue with
it's
science.
A Christmas movie.
Well,
Yeah,
people are arguing. I'm trying to think what. Well, obviously, it takes place on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Christmas is not tangential to the plot. It is, there are several events in the movie that are precipitated by the holiday. We have John McClane flying on Christmas Eve. His flight's on Christmas Eve, right? It's all on the same day, right?
I do believe this movie probably goes into, like, by the end of the movie, it's Christmas. It's
because it's like
midnight.
after midnight.
Yeah. Because
he goes right from the airport to the limo.
Yeah,
and then
Argyle picks him up.
Argyle.
One of such a great side character.
All right, so it takes place on Christmas Eve. There's Christmas music all through it. We'll talk about the music later. But I want to say that I think the Run DMC song kind of sets the tone for me as far as Christmassy. It's like, this is Christmas, but it's not your dad's Bing Crosby record.
Yes, he goes, how about some Christmas music? This is Christmas music. That right there, I am so into this goddamn movie by that point. I'm already, we're kind of jumping around here a little bit, but like the titles, when the title comes up, there's the intro to the main theme, one of the main themes of the score to this movie, with the literal jingle bells being jingled.
Yes. They work into the score. They work in a lot of different Christmas songs.
Right.
Too.
And I guess Ode to Joy isn't necessarily, is it a Christmas song? Kind of. I don't know. It is now.
It is joyful.
Because this is a Christmas movie. But I think we should just skip over that. The science is in.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm in agreement that it is a Christmas movie, and it is the best Christmas movie. There's no Christmas movie that's even close to how well this movie is made.
I watch it every Christmas. Every year on Christmas, I watch it. I make a point. Because it's a holiday tradition. It's a tradition in our house.
Well, I have to go into the attic and watch it on VHS usually by myself, but I do make a point to watch it at Christmas.
Nice.
And any other day of the week, really.
Well, it'd be hard to overstate the dramatic impact this movie had on just the action genre.
Yes.
Because there were just, for a couple of things, there were so many, let me just go down the list here of movies that were Die Hard on a blank or Die Hard in a blank. Because all throughout the 90s, this movie kind of set the tone for really the next 20 years of action movies. They were all compared to Die Hard. It was a trendsetter. It started a subgenre, really. So we had these are just the ones I remember off the top of my head. I'm sure there are many more. There is Under Siege, which is Die Hard in a boat with Steven Seagal. Under Siege 2, Die Hard on a train with Steven Seagal. Cliffhanger.
Horrible.
Cliffhanger. I rewatched Cliffhanger.
I was just watching it the other day. Me too.
That first scene is so intense, though. Where the girl
it's
falls.
Brutal. And when she falls, there's 10 shots of her falling forever.
You notice one of them's the same shot of Hans Gruber, basically the same stunt where she's falling in slow motion. The camera's looking down at her, and she's.
I can't wait to talk about that shot because
we should do an episode on Cliffhanger.
I would love to.
All right,
is that the next movie? There we go. Next movie, Die Hard on a Mountain.
Okay, Die Hard on a Mountain. We have Sudden Death. You saw that, right? Die Hard at a Penguins game.
Yeah, of course. I'm from Pittsburgh.
Everybody from Pittsburgh is required to see.
My friend's brother was in extra running in the background in Panic.
Really, that movie has some great moments, though. That's kind of a sleeper. It's good. Yeah, and
people forget about it.
All right, so there's
add that to the list too.
Yeah, so just tons of the weirdest one for me. There's actually a Star Trek episode.
Let's check number one. The first time during this podcast that Brad has brought up Star Trek.
Reference. There's a Starship Mine, season 6, episode 18. It's literally Die Hard on the Enterprise. And there's even a line in it. One of the villains actually says, "You won't kill me, you're Starfleet," which is the exact same line that Tony says to Bruce Willis in this movie.
We, my wife and I just recently rewatched through all of Stranger Things again. And there in season 3, the sheriff does that thing. "Oh, you won't shoot me," or that he puts a gun on a bad guy. "You won't shoot me. You have rules." Yeah, that's what they keep telling me, or whatever.
That's what my captain keeps telling me.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Bruce Willis. Whoa.
Oh yeah.
You owe me a beer.
Whoa. He is doing what's Zoolander's thing? Blue Steel, Blue Magnum.
Yeah.
He invented that, man. He's killing it.
He is.
If this movie wasn't so good, well directed and crafted and put together, he's kind of Bruce. It's I can't imagine anybody else in this role, but he also is almost the worst part of the movie too.
Well,
there's just moments where his physicality is perfect. There's a ton of stuff where he's just perfect. To some of his emotional moments, he doesn't really bring it as well.
Because I want to talk about that specifically because Bruce Willis being cast in this, Die Hard is the sequel, is based on a book called Nothing Lasts Forever. The book is a sequel to another book called The Detective from 1968. They made a movie on about the detective with Frank Sinatra, and that's more of a noir crime thriller. So they were, because of that, somehow they were contractually obligated to offer Frank Sinatra the role. And he turned it down, saying that he was too old. He's 70. So first of all, can you imagine this movie with Frank Sinatra instead of Bruce Willis? What?
If it looked exactly how it looked, because and everything else played out exactly how it played out, maybe it would be still kind of okay because it's such a strong movie. But
this was a big story at the time.
Bruce, Bruce wasn't really in much before this, correct?
Right. He was known primarily as a comedic actor. We think of Bruce Willis now and we think of this grizzled, tough guy kind of character.
Yeah, hard ass, yeah.
he was known in that time. He was known for comedic roles, and he was in a TV show called Moonlighting, and that was kind of a big deal too, because at the time, TV actors didn't really do movies and vice versa. There was a big divide there. So that was a big deal. But so Frank Sinatra turns it down, and then John McTiernan's first choice is Schwarzenegger. They had just worked together on Predator just the year before.
Another perfect movie.
Schwarzenegger turns it down, saying he wants to do a comedy, and he ends up doing Twins instead.
Well, I do love Twins. We should talk Twins sometimes.
I think we should do an episode on Twins for sure. And then after that, here's a list of actors who were offered the role and turned it down. Sylvester Stallone, Richard Gere, Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, Mel Gibson, Don Johnson, Richard Dean Anderson, Paul Newman, and James Caan. Those people all were...
Wow.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford kind of gets his own, this kind of character, just like a dude. Yes, he is a cop, but he's not like a special forces guy. I'm so glad. The thing is, this movie's such a giant turning point in giant blockbuster action movies. Before, it was like the giant muscle guy, the solo one guy, kills everybody thing. It was so overblown and macho 80s-ness. This is kind of believable in some respects.
Well, I think that was
Bruce's character.
Yeah, I think that was one thing that also reestablished the genre is how we think about the hero. Bruce Willis in this role was kind of an everyman. He's kind of more believable. Like you said, those other guys like Schwarzenegger and Stallone were like Adonises.
Could you imagine either of those guys? This movie wouldn't be, that would have been put Sinatra in before you put Stallone or Arnold.
Yeah, so I think he really made the movie. He made you, I think, empathize with the character more. And there's a lot better character development with not just Bruce Willis's character, but with all the characters really than you typically see in an action film. A lot of times action films have characters that are very one-dimensional or aren't really fleshed out at all. But
the
this
attention
movie,
to detail, it's on every level is incredible.
Yeah, every character is so richly painted. Even characters that you only see for a few seconds are very there's so much. They're given so much life and backstory.
The FBI guys, Johnson and Johnson,
no relation.
Yeah,
no, the other one.
Yeah,
I always wondered what they said to him.
Well, one could only imagine.
Yeah, you gotta. What's the other side of that conversation? Hi, I'm Agent Johnson. Pause. No, the other one. What question did he ask? I don't know.
This is also Alan Rickman's first movie.
That's right.
He's a theater actor, and Hans Gruber. I mean,
how iconic.
It's the actual heist plot in this movie is so good, and how it unfolds, and he has it all. He's always in control to an extent, even when shit's going wrong.
He starts
right.
Off
he loses it on
cool.
Holly whenever she says you're just a common thief or something, and he says I'm an exceptional thief.
Yeah, so there's great. I mean, I think Alan Rickman's performance elevates this too.
He even puts himself out there. He does a full dive to grab the MP5 submachine gun at that, when they're shooting out the glass, that scene.
Yeah,
shoot the glass. He's a badass too.
Yeah, we got his stunt that he does at the end, when he's falling. He of course did that himself. That stunt involved him being dropped 20 feet or something into a big bag, and they did it twice. They did 2 takes of it, and then they used the first take.
Didn't they also say we're going to count to 3 and then we're going to do it? And they did it. Of course, they drop them on 2 or whatever.
Yes. Well, that's how the story goes. So
I was kind of get into this later, but that particular shot is, I would imagine it's blue screen, like they used a blue mat, and the rotoing of his hair and stuff, you can kind of see it if you were really paying attention and you have the eye for it. But it looks, for 1988, to this day, it looks so good. It looks like he's really there in the shot, not like the lighting is perfect. People almost take it for granted how good this movie is. Like, oh yeah, Die Hard, it's the best. That's where they kind of, no one's talking about how well shot this movie is and how the lighting and the acting and how technical it is. In Hollywood, they have a saying, not that I am, but they say, if you're having fun on a movie set, the movie's probably not going to be that great. But if you're hating it, it's going to be an amazing movie. Oh. And I would think that they hated this movie, like making this movie. It is so technical. All the pans and whips and like where the actors have to be on point, or like the focus changes whenever he cocks his gun, and in all these very technical scenes. It's extremely impressive.
Yes, agreed. Let's get into, all right, so overall impressions. We did cultural context. We talked about the impact this movie had. It was like it got kind of mixed reviews. The end story that was the other thing about Bruce Willis, was that he got paid $5 million to work on this, which at the time was unheard of. That was just an insane amount of money for an actor to get for a movie at that time.
And for like not being,
and for not being real famous.
He's not like, it doesn't have a name yet.
Yeah. He was in Moonlighting, and then he was in a comedy called Blind Date, which wasn't very good. And then he's in this. So that was a real, and the studio really didn't have a lot of faith in the film. They didn't feature Bruce Willis on the promotional materials at all. The first poster only had the building, and then when it started to get reviewed and reviewers started to say that Bruce Willis was actually really good in it, then they added his face to the poster and they added his name above the title of the movie on all of the promotional materials. So it wasn't expected to do that well, but obviously it did. And, it just blew up at the box office. So, its legacy, I mean, Olympus Has Fallen, that was like 2013 or something, right? That was Die Hard at the White House, right?
Right.
There were 2 Die Hard at the White House movies that year in 2013. There was Olympus Has Fallen and then White House Down, which were both the exact same movie. There
was something I have never watched those movies there. I can't do it. 2 White House. There's something I kind of noticed this time watching it, I think kind of elevates it, is I particularly like movies that have, in the movie, there is a crowd watching, like Truman Show. There's literally a crowd watching Truman, and how they incorporate that into, it's almost the crowd is how you're supposed to be reacting. Either they're laughing or they're upset or whatever. This movie has that aspect with the cops on the ground, Al Powell, and I love Al Powell. Argyle. Oh, so good.
You're right. The attention to detail in this movie is really exceptional. Just all the little character moments.
Across the board, too.
I always think, like, even characters, like when they're storming the building, when the police first get there and decide they're going to go in, there's one guy who, like, walks into a rose.
Yes. Okay.
Walks into a rose bush and he goes, ow. But there's a little shot of a guy getting hurt by a bush.
I wrote down rose bush SWAT ? That's actually one shot. Is it just to add to the like stupidity that they're embodying of the LAPD.
Yeah, the LAPD is so incompetent in this movie. It's just,
and then the FBI is like,
and the FBI
they're
is
shitting
brutal.
all over the FBI.
Yeah,
Whoever, the guy who wrote this movie hates the FBI
and the LAPD.
Yeah.
Although I'll say
New York City cops are cool.
Dwayne Robinson gets some of my favorite lines in the movie, like several of his lines.
Oh, what a scumbag. Down. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
He goes after they blow up the building, and there's this huge action shot set piece.
I wrote this one down too, yeah.
He says, well, we're going to need some new FBI guys, I guess.
Yeah, I wrote that one down. So good. It fits, though, in the movie.
Yeah.
Like it's great because he's believable. He is that guy, especially coming off of Breakfast Club. Same character, basically.
Yeah, that guy always played the same character. Looking up his name because I knew I was going to forget it. Paul Gleason. Yeah. So that character is so ridiculous. It's almost like he's being a counterpoint antagonist to everything McClane's trying to do. He's just saying the opposite thing. And I love little bits too where when he's explaining something, but he's just repeating what somebody told him badly.
Right.
Like when the FBI gets there, he just repeats the same information that McClane gave him. He's like, well, I guess there's about 30 hostages up there, maybe on the 30th floor.
Yeah, I love how it's like I wrote down it's a pro anti-cop movie, pro/anti-cop. Yeah, because the main character's a cop. But then true. The rest of the movie is just shitting all over cops and like law enforcement. One thing, the first scene that his when Bruce is on the plane, the guy tells him, "Take your socks off and make fists with your toes." Well, that sets up the whole thing for him not to have shoes the entire movie, which is a giant aspect of this movie.
And puts him at further disadvantage.
The Rolex watch given by Ellis to the wife, to Holly. It's a what a scumbag. He's so good.
We're going to talk about Ellis in a minute. I see where you're going though.
That sets up the whole thing at the end. That's what Han is holding on to.
Yeah.
Or Hans is holding on to at the end. It's just loaded with that kind of stuff.
The watch is almost like a symbol for their marital problems, which it's ironic that's what kind of saves him at the end. Is she loses the watch, but they're able to reconcile.
Making out in a limo. Yeah. Well, if you want to get into Ellis, let's have the rest of the podcast about Ellis because Johnny boy.
I like all the little looks that Takagi gives him. Do you notice that?
Oh, yeah. Takagi is just giving Ellis death eyes after he does the blow, and he's just being a complete ass to a cop.
And then later, when the terrorists are taking everyone hostage and Ellis is like freaking out, and Takagi's just looking at him like, you're a coward.
He's like freaking out, not only because he is a coward, but he's also like high as hell.
That's true.
He can't stand still. When you watch him in that scene after he just did a line whenever he first meets McClane, he is like so jittery and it's good.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
There's some dated stuff that we'll get into.
Oh, for sure.
Like the office politics and then also kind of the gender politics of it. Just the idea that there's like a Japanese company who's buying out American companies, and that was kind of a thing in the late 80s and early 90s. There was like a kind of a wave of like almost anti-Japanese sentiment because they were perceived as like
economical enemy.
Yeah, they were buying stuff and they were becoming very powerful economically. And then just the whole idea that Holly feels like she has to use her maiden name.
It's a Japanese company. They don't understand.
And I wrote down like Mrs. and Miss, like, which people don't really use that anymore. I don't think, but
no, I randomly had that thought at a stoplight about a week ago.
that
the Mrs. and Miss. Yeah, no.
nobody uses that. It's just Ms.
Yeah.
now. But she very makes it a point at the end of the movie to say Mrs. McClane, and she really emphasizes the Mrs.
Yeah.
Like because John introduces her to Al as Miss Gennaro. And she's
well,
like,
that's a compromise right there. He's compromising and like being
true.
like, it's fine if you do this. I love you regardless. And she's saying, no, it's cool. I'm a McClane.
also the idea that John McClane feels emasculated because his wife makes more money than he does. That's kind of an 80s thing too.
Yeah. I'm all about that.
You're all about your wife.
Let me
making
do.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to do less. Same editor as Roadhouse.
That's right. Yeah, I had that written down too. Yeah.
The editing in this movie, how the beats go is very very animated, you know. In particular, some of the scene that comes to mind is when he throws the C4 down the elevator shaft, where everything's building up. You know, he's like, Hans, fuck you, don't, shoot another missile at the car thing, and he's like, fire again, and yada yada yada. And then the music's building up, and then he, choke on this or whatever he says. He throws the thing down, the music cuts away, and it's just a nice long pause there. The chair goes completely out of view. Then the explosion, then a couple quick cuts, big wide shot. There's a lot of that really dynamic filmmaking in it. It's so good. And you could almost pause this movie at any time and have like a film class discussion of the shot composition. In that Ellis scene, if you look at Carl, how he has his knee up and his elbow on his knee. It's very, and like the other guy, the other terrorist brought him a Coca-Cola. He's standing in the background with a machine gun. It's like a nice triangle kind of composition. There's like a ton of stuff like that.
I noticed that.
Very Akira Kurosawa kind of, where how they all like have stage. It looks, especially like I would say a lot of the LAPD shots where there's just all this chaos of cops running in the background. There's like 10 cops standing in one spot and, in one shot, and they're all like just positioned so carefully and perfectly. Like I said, the meticulousness of this movie, that must have like on set, people were not having a good time. There's no way.
The other scene I noticed, which is an important scene for a lot of reasons, is the scene where Hans Gruber tries to convince Takagi to give him the code. So they're in like this room, and the table has this zigzag shape to it. Takagi's sitting facing away from camera. There's a really nice master shot. You get Takagi facing away from camera. And then you've got this beautiful triangular composition that's created by Hans Gruber here, and then Theo waiting to take down the code, and we'll get into Theo more in a minute. And then Carl's there, and also Tony's there, but Tony's like kind of sitting
way in the back. He's like in a very far end of the table. I just noticed that this viewing too myself.
But whenever they cut to a close-up of Hans during that scene, you see him out of focus in the back, and you see a little piece of Carl's knee to show that he's got the power. And then when you see Takagi, he's just sort of isolated. So that was a good scene to show kind of the power dynamics. And also that scene, of course, culminates with Takagi getting killed, which McClane witnesses, and that kind of raises the stakes for him.
Also, what a brutal, like, squib explosion. It really raises lots of good squibs in this movie. Raises the stakes big time whenever he gets. I like that. I was thinking about why wouldn't Takagi say something? And I think this is just speculation, but I think he doesn't say anything because if he does say something, he's fucked anyways.
Yeah.
Like money wise, like he's done for, like the business is done for. If they take all of that, like he needs that stuff.
I looked up the actor who plays Takagi, and he's got credits dating back to the 50s.
I also, again, to the attention to detail is, and a little kind of story crafting going on and character building, is Carl and Theo have a bet that that Takagi wouldn't or would give the code.
Yeah, that's right.
So good.
So Theo.
Theo, let's, you were kind of talking about how like Hans's command over his troops, if you will. I fucking love how they shoot them rolling into the building. The Mercedes with Theo and Carl goes up the ramp. The truck goes down the ramp. There's almost no, Hans isn't telling anybody what to do. Everybody just knows what to do. The plan is perfect. And that all culminates to this great little moment where again, they do that thing where the music stops. Hans gets to the front door. He has the key pass or whatever. He looks out the front door a little bit. He locks it. Music starts back up. He throws the thing to Carl, and it's so good.
Yeah, the rhythm in this.
Oh, the music too is spot on. I love the progression of the Ode to Joy, where some people are humming it at points. It's kind of speckled throughout the score a little bit, and then when it really truly comes in is whenever they open the vault, and you almost are rooting a little bit for Hans at that moment.
I did write down terrorists know what they're doing, because we have that scene where Tony's trying to find the breakers, and he's like counting the doors or something. He says, all right, now I turn left, now I turn right, and now I got to go 2 doors. You remember that? Yeah,
it's just this subtle little thing. Whenever I'm just thinking, like, people are so crazy about these John Wick movies. I don't know if you've watched any of them. There's nothing to it. It's like Keanu is awesome. Like, his physicality and the training he does is very impressive. And there's lots of cool little fight scene stuff, but it's just in between fight scenes. Who cares?
I really like too how the editing will, you'll be cutting between 3 or 4 different lines of action. Like you'll be seeing, John fighting Carl, and then
they're going up to the roof.
Yeah, going up to the roof, and Hans like kind of getting all the money from the vault, and you're never unsure what you're looking at. You're never unsure who you're looking at.
And lens flares. This movie is going nuts on lens flares, and I love it. I don't know about you. I wrote down lens flares done right. There's a ton of lens flares in this movie. Well, there's crazy circle ones, and they're used appropriately, though. Right.
They're like,
I agree.
Like behind Hans when he's looking into the vault, like Ode to Joy is playing.
Oh, that's one of my favorite scenes.
There was a couple things I thought were kind of clunky. The scene where John's typing in, trying to find his wife in the directory. And I know that scene is to establish that that's when John learns his wife's using her maiden name. So that's obviously an important character moment. But then the guard says, oh, they're at the Christmas party. They're the only ones left in the building. And I thought, what was the point of looking up her name? Why didn't the guard just say, oh, they're on the 30th floor?
Right. Well, another little nitpick thing I noticed this time around was, how would Hans not know what Takagi looked like? He knew every single detail. I don't think he's like a public figure. He would know what he looked like.
He read the article.
I mean, that's a good That's a good scene.
He recognizes his suit.
Right. Yeah.
Without looking at the label.
5 myself.
Well, they got, this whole thing where Hans Gruber is very cultured and classically educated, and he's just got a lot of texture to him. He's got a lot of stuff in there where he's just kind of setting up that he knows a lot of about literature and history, and he reads Forbes, but he didn't catch 60 Minutes.
Something I wrote down was John McClane's evolution, not only in his attitude. At the beginning, he is panicking. It's actually a decent character building where again, seeing it a million times, I take it for granted. But like at the beginning, he's like, "What do I do? What do I do? Come on, think." And and it's a great progression of, he tries the fire alarm, he tries calling from the roof, he tries all these different things. Eventually, throws a body out the window, as one does. But which leads to my favorite line in the whole movie: "Welcome to the party, pal."
Oh yeah, and he's like,
but by the end, he's like, especially when he's the scene with him and Hans, whenever he thinks Hans is a hostage. At that point, the command and confidence he holds is killer. He is the hero by that point. But also the evolution of his tank top, crispy white to like disgustingly fully brown.
Yeah,
and like by the end, he's just covered in blood. Love it.
And then it's just gone, right? At some point.
Oh, it is gone by the time he fights Carl. It's off for some reason. Yeah, because he uses the Christmas masking tape or packing tape to tape the gun to his back. For like genre twisting movie where instead of having this, 80s bohunk, unstoppable force character, it's just it gets everything right the first go.
I also like the character development through his relationship with Al. Like a lot of their little side conversations. Both, Al with his tragedy where he can't bring himself to shoot his gun, and then also just McClane kind of opens up to him in a way that he couldn't open up to his wife, and he kind of learns to communicate better. Yeah.
There's a moment that maybe you can make sense to you. He's talking. The camera's behind John. He's walking, and it's like a medium shot, a waist and up, and it's kind of following him as he's saying like they're highly organized, yada yada yada, and they probably European because of the clothing labels, and then it comes into a close up, long pause, cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what did I miss? What am I missing there?
I always assumed he just heard a noise, and he was just being cautious. That scene has always stuck with me though, that pause.
Yeah.
It's like, if I was Al, would I go, "Are you still there?"
And maybe the most classic scene other than Yippee-Ki-Yay is, "Come out to the coast. We'll have a few laughs." I love it. There's a Christmas ornament of that. Yes. I need one of those. Alex wouldn't approve, but.
So when you talk about music and sound, I think we
kind of covered it. But
yeah, I did want to say my favorite musical moment, and there's a lot of them. They use music really well. We talked about "Ode to Joy" kind of reappearing several times. My favorite musical bit is when Uli decides to eat the candy. It's this tense scene.
Yeah, crunch bar.
Yeah, and they're like, they're getting geared up. Him and Eddie are getting geared up to, the cops are getting ready to storm the building, and he's like all set up. And it's a tense scene. And then he's like sitting there, and there's a big pause, and then he kind of looks down, and there's a bunch of candy there, and the music goes, there's like this little doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
He's like, well, okay. He looks around nervously, like he doesn't want anyone to see him eating the candy.
Right.
I love that moment.
But if that moment has always stuck in my brain for some reason. But he's eating a Crunch bar, and there's maybe two shots of him. He picks the Crunch bar up and he rips it open, and then there's him eating the Crunch bar, and then it comes back to him before he sets up the aim and shoot. I think he's eating a Mars bar.
Yeah.
Or something. He's cranking down some candy.
He just grabbed a bunch of chocolate.
Terrorists got to eat too,
Oh, let me see. What else did I write down? Inappropriate office sex.
Yeah, there's not as much nudity as Roadhouse, but
that's true.
You have the poster girl of like whoever weird like maintenance man has some like spot up on the roof with this nudie posters.
He kind of like that poster. There's a point where that poster gives him a sense of direction.
That's what we with Roadhouse, we were kind of nitpicking on the fact that the sense of location and geography is like basically not there. Right. But with this movie, like you have the entranceway to the elevators. I feel like I could almost walk around that building.
It is very well realized. Yeah.
Another thing, as far as that with the cinematographer, and like set designer, there's always it's either lens flares or a combination of lens flares or like very dramatic lighting with lots of cast shadows going on all the time, especially Venetian blinds, like the mood setting there. And then on top of that, the amount of steam and smoke that is just happening on the roof or in a like where they have the C4 and stuff. It's just like steam is just shooting out. Is that what buildings are like? I don't know. It's dramatic and it works.
It's very noir. I wanted to point out a shot. There's a couple you see inside the newsroom only a couple of times, but you get a sense of it. It's like very analog. In the background, you see all the reel-to-reel editors and stuff. But there's a really cool tracking shot when Thornburg is trying to convince his producer to let him have a van. The camera's like following them through the studio, and there's all this little business going on that's believable.
Let's see. Oh, the most brutal death in this movie, again, going back to the shoot the glass scene, is there's 3 terrorists at that point. There's Hans, Carl, and another guy. I don't know his name. He is just making a mad dash for John, and John's like laying on the ground. He just destroys his legs.
Yeah.
Squibs are going off the chain, and he falls and face plants like on a ledge.
Yeah.
Like a lip of something. It makes me cringe every time. Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty brutal. Did you notice that when they started shooting, the script wasn't finished? So
really,
and they didn't know what the terrorist plan was for getting out of the building. So they came up with this ambulance like halfway through. Remember how Theo pulls an ambulance out of the truck? But
do you see into that truck at the beginning?
You do. And there's no ambulance. Yes. And they realized that while they were shooting it, they realized this. Like we saw inside the truck, and there was no ambulance. And I think at that point, John McTiernan was like, "Meh, whatever."
Well, I've never noticed that about million times I've seen this movie. That's crazy because I feel like it's so well thought out. The plan is awesome. Like it's either Takagi's gonna give it right off the bat and they're good to go. They could just like basically leave if they I think
Theo's still got to drill through all of them though. I think Takagi's password was just the first. Oh, and I wrote down, I think Takagi's password was Red Castle. Did you see that?
No.
I was thinking that's the worst password ever.
And what's that alluding to?
Theo figures it out. It's really quick. If you blink, you miss it. Like you remember
use any numerals or symbols?
No, just Red Cat. You remember in Spaceballs where the password was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? That's kind of what it reminded me of.
The now I have a machine gun. Ho ho ho.
Oh yeah,
Tony's. Like the delivery of that whole scene. Oh, so good.
And Tony's death too gives Carl motivation. Like Carl basically is a psycho after that, and totally.
Well, he was just an asshole to his brother. But his brother, the younger brother, what's the Tony?
Tony. Yeah, Tony.
I'm very impressed by your knowledge of the names of
I looked it up.
The henchmen.
They never say his name.
But okay, and he doesn't look like a Tony at all.
No, he's German too. Well, that was Die Hard. When we did Roadhouse, we had all these categories and we kind of stuck to them. This conversation was just all over the place. We didn't stick to any categories at all. So we're going to figure out some categories. So I guess
some structure. At
some point, we'll figure out a way to structure these conversations, and they'll probably be a lot smoother. But Die Hard, 1988. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. It's one of the best movies ever made.
If you haven't seen it, you're dead to me, and don't talk to me until you've seen this movie. And if you don't like it, then you're an idiot. That's my takeaway.